story.
Yeah.
So when we were visiting, I remember one of the first times we were together. One of the very first conversations we had once we were in physical proximity to each other on the land was to speak for the trees. And you mentioned this book, and then you let me borrow it, and it was so, I could feel it just by first from you talking about it and Diana's work and the language being of the trees. So then being here on this land, and then you mentioning this book, I remember I was sharing this with my friend Kate, who then told me about this Irish school. So that's pretty cool how that unfolded naturally, you know? You might want some. Yeah? Okay. Let's roll with it. This is life. Yeah, it was like a transmission. I know that's a silly word, but it's true. It was like when you were talking about the book, I handed the book, and it was like an embodied sense of this is really a lot deeper than the English language.
Yeah. What made you, was it just of course, when you heard about the course, it was just obvious? Or did it take a little convincing for yourself?
At first, I was like, well, this is synchronistic because you brought in the book and mentioned the language of the alphabet coming from the trees. And I did at first being like, is this... I'm wanting to learn indigenous language, and so I was wanting to make sure that it was honoring the root from an oral history type of way of learning. And so once I felt it, and the invitation and the person who invited me I really trust, it was like, I want to do this, especially when it was like, I need to tell Savannah about this. And that made it like I wanted to take it even more after you said you wanted to do this, because it was having a friend to go through the course with.
Yeah, that was really amazing. I loved getting that text. I'm gonna sit up here casually.
And and then for you, it was like, what about for you when we started having Gaelic dreams? I don't know.
I know, well, I was always I feel like the Celtic way, without even realizing it, I feel like I've been living it my whole life, you know, and also always feeling very connected with being Irish, and you know, I grew up loving the music and Irish ballads and stories, particularly Selkie stories. I love Selkie stories, and just there's this sound in that comes from Ireland in the movies I would watch, in the audiobooks I would listen to, in the music I would listen to, in the way the stories were told, that was so lyrical, and it was so I don't know what the word is, but it kind of made you ache for something. It felt very something familiar, but far away at the same time. And I'm sure there's an Irish word for that.
I was just thinking that. I'm sure there is.
And I just, every time I would hear it, it kind of made me feel something inside, like a feeling of, oh, that feels right, that feels familiar, that feels like home. But it's also something that far away, it's something different, it's something ancient and mysterious too. And then I just kind of let that be. I didn't go into that much more than you know, loving stories, loving folklore, loving fairies. And then I think that the first time I kind of went into it more is I was always really drawn to the fiddle and Irish fiddle playing. And then when I decided to pick it up for the first time, it was like holding it in my hands. It felt so good to participate in those sounds and to like engage with those sounds, even though they found, you know, when I first started playing the fiddle, it didn't really sound like anything like I had listened to, you know, but just like, but something in me, I think, wanted to engage with the material of the Irish sound, of Gaelic sound, which I didn't know was Gaelic sound at the time. And yeah, so I think the fiddle was kind of my first introduction into that. And then I had never, I remember when I was in Ireland, being on the Aran Islands, and a man coming up to me and starting to speak Gaelic. And I remember just this feeling of, he was so sure. It wasn't even like a question. He just came up and he said stuff, started saying things to me so matter of fact, like a monologue. He just assumed I spoke it back. And I was like so taken aback. Like, it was so sure. I was like, it took me a minute to like process that it was not, that I couldn't understand what he was saying. And that moment really, like, it really stuck with me. And I had never even thought about exploring the language myself. But when you asked that, when you told me about the course and when I looked into it, it was like, holy cow, I have to do this. And I think it was right after that my mom sent me a message like, today's Imbolc to honor Bridget. And it was just like swirling around, like finding the Druid sanctuary up the road. It was like reading To Speak for the Trees. It was clearly in the air. It was clearly something that needed to be reawakened.
Yes, that's so amazing at Aran Islands, because that's exactly the word, is like remembering. And I love that we both have been to the Aran Islands.
Yeah.
Because the first time I went to Ireland, I didn't know I had Irish blood until just recently, actually, because I got the DNA test. My mom was adopted, and so I'd been to Ireland twice, not knowing I had the blood, but feeling so connected. And I always thought it was through just the land and the welcoming, and the first time I remember I went and saw it. I was there for a friend's wedding, and she has family there. She's very Irish, and they had a town seer who doesn't present himself as that at all. He's like, it wouldn't be someone, he doesn't do it for just anybody. It's just for his friends and family. And that was my introduction into this magical realm of the Celtic way, and how he read about us was through a teacup, and how he would answer things about our future. He would leave it in such a, it's so Celtic in that way, like there's so many possibilities. And he would say, should you, could you, would you? I don't know. But you know inside your heart. And the way he would say this would be so inviting. And so I relate with you about that feeling. It was the feeling of being in the heart. And then that's what the language does. I feel like it goes right there, through the songs, through the intonations, and then learning more around how it emerged from the land and the trees and the echoes of that and what's happened to the land. And there's that ache. It's like this, we're trying to piece together. So for me, it was like I didn't know, so this part was severed of my identity because of so many reasons, but then thinking of like how the trees have been severed, and then there's this awakening I feel like Bridget and all the spirits, the beings of that land are like calling us home and saying, listen.
Keep it going.
Another thing I loved is how you really got into the Claire Sands song.
Oh my gosh.
And like learned it, and then it inspired me to sing it, and I was like, this makes sense to learn the language this way.
Yeah, that was really cool because, well, just being in that atmosphere, like listening to those teachers and listening to the music and the stories, it was like it definitely opened something and awakened something in me, but I didn't really feel like I could quite learn it because it was so, yes, it felt something in me remembered it, but also at the same time it felt so new and so hard to grasp that I had to first like be woken into it. And then once that happened, it was like, okay, then I began to pick up a little bit more. But the first time I really felt like I could finally start to hear it was when I found that song and it spoke to me, and I didn't know what it was about, and I stayed up all night in the new moon learning it. And the next day, the artist Claire was the guest speaker, and she shared the meaning of the song, and it was the goddess Bridget, who we had been connecting with for the last few months, and it was about springtime. And then going back and really learning the song, that was like my first time where I was like, oh, okay, now I can actually understand the words. It's more than just letting them flow into me and experience them, but now I can reiterate them. Mm-hmm. But it had to be through music, and not just any music. It had to be through music that I felt spoke to me.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And then by you sharing that at our first Anam Cara fire and bringing that in, woke up in me. I was like, this song I must learn. And then that was what I wanted to learn for our fire at spring equinox. And that was while you were in the birth portal. So using the song and bringing that, and just like showing how much the medicine is in the language and in the song and in the magic of how the Gaelic language moves. It's like it's alive, and then it wakes up in us and isn't working on the linear plane at all.
Very much in the liminal.
Very much in the spiral, just like the Celtic artwork. It's so, there's spirals and there's continuity and there's movement, and that's what I feel the language is doing through us, through our bodies.
And it all connects too.
Right, Finn?
Yeah.
That was such a good moment. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
What's one word that you feel like is really gonna stay with you?
The one that I was like the first one I really learned, and it keeps going up because it's so in my heart, is Mokri. Is in Mokri. And there was so much throughout the Skolskarta that was bringing in the heart. We went through all of the centers, but each time it was coming back to moving from our heart, slowing down to enter into our heart. So Mokri is just, it was so sincere. So that's what I'd say is really landing and integrating. How about you?
I love that. I think for me it's Antierman, which is sanctuary. Because that word just came through the ethers. It felt like, literally. Driving down the road and then thinking of the land and thinking of the heart of the land and what it is, and feeling this word want to roll off my tongue and playing with it and not quite finding it, and then waiting and hearing an English word, hearing the sanctuary, and then connecting the dots, looking up what is the Irish word for sanctuary, and almost the same. I think I had spoken Tachman and they're Tirchman, and that meant sanctuary, and that's what this land is to me. On Tirchman, a place of sanctuary. Yeah. That's definitely gonna stay with me.
Yeah. How much Irish do you have in your blood?
I think like 65%.
Yeah. It's what's so amazing, because I feel like it's your blood remembers.
Yeah. Truly.
It's so cool. It's in like being communicated through dreams. And listening to that. And then now having this relationship with all of these other plant beings. Like the clover.
Yeah, and learning the language, it's more than just the language. It's a history, it's a people, it's a way of life, it's a way of seeing. All of that lives in the way we speak. And just like, too, like water holds memory. Oh, yeah, our blood holds memory. Our cellular membranes hold memory. Quite literally.
And then the sound of the language of the land that comes back into the body, through the body. It's like bringing it in tune. And that to me is the healing that we're in right now as a humanity, is to, there has been such a severance, there's been so much disconnect from nature, from our nature, and that has really shown through language. And to me, this is the call for listening to it. It's the land is calling us back home to be like, remember this relationship, remember this sacred relationship. And it's the codes. It's the code of conduct, right, Finn? Yeah. It's the codes.
I mean, I'm not even walking away. Like, if you had asked me, like, how much Irish did you learn? It's like, not that much, but but the spirit of the language has been awoken within me.
Right. And like, that's so valuable, because it's like how we're learning is what matters. Because we can recite, but if we stay in the head, we're missing it. Because you can go and you can memorize and repeat, and like there's a lot of decolonizing of learning that way. And if we're learning through the oral history, if we're learning from storytelling, if we're learning from music, and we're learning from other bodies, and that was what was brilliant about this course, is so many people came. There's so many contributors, whether they were dancers or different musicians or storytellers, and the collaboration, that spirit is like, yes, there's books that are really powerful, but the potency of learning from another living being is priceless, and that spirit. It was, well, I think that is the spirit of the language of Gaelic, is the welcoming, and that it's not about having to do it right or having to, and that was what I loved too in the class, like going through the stumbles and being awkward and like in the Mehel.
Mehel.
But that was encouraged, and part of that was like, that's us moving past the like blocks to like, it's not about getting it right. And I loved that because don't you think it was like, this is a way of life?
Yes. It really is.
Yeah.
It's a way of life.
And like, since you've been waking this up in you, like, how has it, I mean, you mentioned you've been living this way your whole life, not even knowing, but then how would you say that is alive in you, this Celtic way of seeing and being?
Yeah, I think that it's always been, my mindset has always been very connected to the earth and to walk with respect and to see, to really see the plants and animals as relationships. And I just really had a vivid memory of a teacher who followed in many ways a Celtic path, and I just really remember him saying one day on the trails that all the students would walk on, he said, if you've noticed, I don't trim back the plants on the trails. He said, that's for a reason, so I want you to greet them as you brush by them. Aww. And that really, I remember that really stuck with me, and I really carried that with me, like on a trail or when I'm outside, just like brushing my hand in greeting and saying a word of greeting, and just greeting the world as you walk, and like we greet each other. And
that's beautiful. Yeah. It's like an acknowledgement of the beings as beings.
Yeah.
And if, like, imagine, I just imagine, like, if that is a way we could perceive and know our relationship with the natural world is not separate, then we as a collective wouldn't make these decisions that are harming our earth, our planet, our home, our body. And so that is really motivating.
Yeah, it really is. And to find like culture and community around that, because for me, like, it was so powerful to find these things myself, but then also sometimes it was disorienting, and I wanted old ancient knowledge that was passed down, and I love the relationship of discovering that myself and building like my own unique relationship, and the aliveness of just every moment of one person being alive and how they relate to the world is so personal yet so universal at the same time. And yet also, like, as I've started to actually learn more about the Celtic way, it's been really amazing to have a structure or a framework to explore this relationship even deeper, I think, or to affirm the feelings that have come up for me, And so it's less about teaching something new and it's more about remembering and then creating a container to go deeper into the experience.
Yeah. Yeah. It is. And right there, like, the breeze just came in and greeted that. And I feel like the wind carries our voice, the words, the songs.
Should we do a little reading from Diana to
Yeah.
close our thing?
I love
Unless
that.
you feel anything else is coming to your mind.
Just that I'm so grateful. I'm so grateful for you. I'm so grateful for this land, for this, that you brought this book. That led to me mentioning this to a friend, which led to her telling me about this school skarta, which led to just so many blessings.
Yeah.
And blessings
Truly.
and blessings and blessings. And I just want to thank you for, like, sharing from your heart. So, like, sincerely this, and then it has been this spiraling out. Like the, what's it called? That we've driven?
Triskelion.
Triskelion. Yeah.
The triple spiral.
Triple spiral. So that's it. Just feeling the anamkara, and so grateful for our budding, deepening relationship.
Yeah. Likewise. Truly. It's such a gift to explore these things with other beings.
Yeah.
It's a real gift to learn together. I love it. I love learning. Okay, Diana, what do you want to share? Want to pick the page?
Which one, Ben? You can drop a rock in whichever page you want. That one?
I felt like it was too back. Come on. We're just gonna do this all day. There was always a feeling of recognition in my bones when I first encountered these ruins. It was something like the sensation you got when your spouse, sibling, or parent enters a room before you've actually laid eyes on them. The hint of familiarity in the air before you consciously register their presence. Sometimes the feeling was reassuring, and other times it was ever so slightly unsettling. The spookiness of unknown and invisible power humming in the air. On the sacred island of Gogan Bara, about 10 miles north of Lachines, the wall of prayers willed into existence by the monks who once lived in St. Finbar's oratory can make the hair on your arm stand up. When I'm there, I constantly feel as though someone or something is standing right behind me, not necessarily with malicious intentions, because its ancient origin was of divinity, prayer, and personal sacrifice. I'm going to do that again. It was something like the sensation you get when your spouse or sibling or parent enters the room. The hint of familiarity in the air before you consciously register their presence.
Yeah.
It's just what we were...
Marginara rector, ciclando aegledrut, quivni descita, abelonderu. Marginara rector, ciclando aegledrut, quivni descita, abelonderu. Krisha casa oiga, is the bridge. Crosses the clock, I'm alone. Creature across the Oiga. Is this the bridge? Crosses the clock. Below the roof.